Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Odin's Movie Blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we'll be talking about the box office, updating some of the numbers in the Excel sheets, and talking a little bit about what the Monday numbers were at the box office. So as you can see, it pretty much repeated what it was over the weekend, with Bad Boys for Life coming in at number one, making $10 million on Monday. Of course, that is a holiday for many people. It made $10.5 million, only a 39% drop from the previous day, which is not that bad, but once again, a lot of people were off from work because it was MLK weekend, so it makes a lot of sense that that film did as well as it did. Dolittle had a small drop with $6.4 million. 1917 made another 4.9. Jumanji: The Next Level made 2.9, and Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker made 2.3, which is interesting because that is still coming in behind Rogue One numbers as the day-to-day totals go, and keeping in mind that that is not including the holiday bump that Rogue One would have had at the same time in its history, is still an interesting thing to find nonetheless, because Rogue One, after about this week, will have started to drop off into the below $1 million per day totals on certain weekdays. So I'll be interested to see just how Rise of Skywalker falls in the similar fashion, if it finally drops below the $1 million per day as consistently as Rogue One did, and whether or not it's going to be able to hold off being able to make back its money domestically. What is interesting about The Rise of Skywalker that I can say is that it has now passed up the unadjusted for inflation numbers of the international numbers. It is still well behind the domestic numbers before adjusting for inflation of Rogue One, but it has now officially surpassed the unadjusted numbers for Rogue One in the international marketplace. So good job to you, Rise of Skywalker. Little Women, the little film that could. People are complaining that the film is not making as much money because men aren't going to see it, and yet the film is profitable. And it's actually made a pretty sizable profit at this point in time. So the people that are complaining, shut your mouth and enjoy the profitability that you actually have in this instance. Frozen 2 is still making some money. Spies in Disguise is still a gigantic loss for Disney, which again goes to show you that they honestly have no care in the world for any of these late Fox properties. They, of course, being Disney, because they are allowing films like Spies in Disguise and Underwater to be some pretty big financial losses for this year. Again, they own those properties, meaning they own those losses. So they might be making bank when it comes to films like Frozen 2 and others, but they are losing massive amounts of money when it comes to almost every Fox project that they have put out since they took over Fox. And what is interesting, of course, is that Weathering with You, which is an anime from G-Kids, is actually making a decent amount of money as well in the limited showings that it is. Again, only about 486 theaters were showing it, $870 per theater. Again, not too terrible when it is as limited of a film as it actually is. So let's go ahead and dive into the good old Excel sheet. If you want to go ahead and see this updated in real time, please go ahead and check over the website ombreviews.home.blog. You can find a link to that in the description of this video. I know it is a mouthful, and I'm working on it as best as I can, but I have indeed updated the numbers just a few minutes ago to as of today. And so let's go ahead and break these down. So as of right now, Bad Boys for Life has made $111 million internationally, meaning that the film is currently still $68 million in the red. However, it has just opened up, and so based on what we find next weekend, based on the second weekend drop-off, it'll determine whether this film will make money. I can see this film not having a terrible drop-off, seeing that there really isn't a whole lot of competition coming its way, and I think that the Bad Boys for Life franchise will, at the end of the day, probably break even, not make a crazy amount of money, but make enough to at the very least be somewhat profitable. It did indeed cost $90 million to make, meaning with actual marketing, $135 million. So it does have some decent amount of money to make up, but still in a decent location nonetheless as far as making its money back. What film is not in a good location is that of Dolittle. So I know that EVS and others have covered the story, and that is the fact that as of right now, Dolittle is in the red for $229 million, meaning that this film, in all likelihood, will end its run having lost well over $100 million and potentially even as much as $150 million. That is just downright awful. And the fact that that film has a star like Robert Downey Jr. attached to it goes to show you that stars don't really sell movies anymore. I know that there's still this mindset in Hollywood that they think, oh, if we attach a big name to it, it automatically means that it's going to be successful. But obviously, it's all all about marketing, and it's all about your campaigns, and it's all about making films that people actually want to go out of their house to go see. We live in a new world. We live in a streaming world, and people will only go to leave for these big event films. It's one of the sad parts about cinema, and that's one of the reasons why I still go back to those words of Martin Scorsese going after Marvel films, calling them roller coasters, or rather calling them theme parks, and saying that he doesn't think that they're actual cinema. And to be honest with you, I think that it's actually doing a lot more damage to cinema because it's treating the movies as just being this event place. And if there is not a big event film, many people just aren't showing up. Now, of course, I think there's blame to be shared all around there as far as, the studios making really bad projects and not putting a lot of originality into their films. And when they do take old school concept, just totally crapping all over the concepts with trying to push woke narratives. And of course, I will also push some blame onto the theater chains themselves for charging way too much for popcorn and things like that, which I understand, having worked at one and understanding that it's because of these deals that the studios make with them. And the studios obviously take a lot of money in those first 2 weeks, especially per ticket. Again, usually about 9 out of every $10 that you spend on a movie ticket on the first weekend and second weekend goes to the studio and not to the movie theater. Explains why they have to make that up by charging up the wazoo for things like popcorn. But Dolittle coming in at a massive loss will likely be one of the biggest losses of 2020, and we have just gotten started. As I said, January is where films go to die, and Dolittle is going to go down in the history books, I imagine, as being one of the finest examples of a well overproduced film, which cost $175 million to produce, meaning to actually budget, rather to produce and to actually market the film. Add on top of that a little more, and you have a total cost of around $262 million on a film that opened at $55 million. Meaning, if you assume a 50% drop or so, you're going to see a film that will probably by the end of next weekend be close to $80 million or so. Meaning this film is going to completely tank by the end of its run. Another film that is indeed tanking is that which is Underwater. This is a Fox project that has essentially, as I said before, been abandoned by Disney. Disney decided just to say, hey, you know what? This film was already in the works. Let's just throw it in January with very little marketing and campaigning and really caring about it and see what happens. Well, guess what? No one went to go see it because Kristen Stewart is also someone that no one really wants to see. I'm just kind of happy that the two films that Kristen Stewart has starred in, especially with all of her political nonsense as of late, have both been giant flops. This one, of course, being the bigger of the two because it was made for a $65 million budget. Total cost $97.5 million and is currently $80 million in the red. Now, it will make a little bit more money, but the fact that the entire worldwide box office is not set to probably even break 50 million is really, really bad. So we're looking at yet another film that is likely going to be one of the biggest box office bombs of 2020, with the film just getting started off. Talking into films that are a lot better, 1917 is at $143 million, but is still $63 million in the red. It still needs to make quite a bit of money back. It is a movie that I think will end up making more as the film continues to go on, especially since I think it'll do very well come this award season. For those that have not been following, it recently won the Producers Guild Award, which basically, if you look to the history of the Producers Guild, it is very, 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 very likely that that film will then go on to repeat winning Best Picture at the Oscars, because the Producers Guild winner and the Oscars Best Picture winner have gone hand in hand around 80% of the time. Like, I think well over 75% of the cases between ever since the PGA started, we have seen that actually be the case where they've pretty much matched up almost perfectly. So 1917 will definitely continue to get a lot of award buzz, and that will definitely get a lot more attention to it, and I think more people go to see it. I hope it makes money back because it is a fantastic film. It is definitely not flopping at this point in time. However, based on my results, based on my current estimates, we're looking at a film that on average is set to lose around $7 million and at best is to make $16 million in net profit. So it still needs a long way to go to make that money back, and it would need to do some very impressive legs and make a lot of money. As I said, if the award shows and the awards recognition is able to give it the attention that I think it deserves, it might be able to actually overwork itself, work itself past my projections, overperform in my projections, but we will have to wait and see if that indeed happens. Like a Boss, a film that nobody asked for, about women in charge, etc., is at a $32 million loss because just no one wants to go see it. Rise of Skywalker is again over that $1 billion mark, just barely. It is still around $92 million in the black, so that is still profit. However, it is also one of the lowest grossing Star Wars films of all time, and when you just take into account it's the last film of the franchise, that is not a good place to be. Cats is also continuing to be probably one of the largest box office bombs of 2019, though not the largest, with a $105 million loss, having made $61 million worldwide at this point in time. If you have not seen Cats, it probably will be very difficult to go see it because it has been basically kicked out of almost every single theater. However, I would recommend you go watch it if you want to enjoy some nightmare fuel. The Grudge, which was made for almost nothing, is $6 million in the positive. So just go ahead and keep in mind all those films that I said were in the red, and either will continue to be in the red or will likely continue to be in the red, and yet a remake of The Grudge, being made for nothing, was able to make at least $6 million in profit. Little Women, as I said before, has made $18 million in profit, so I don't know why they're complaining about people not going to see it, because, hey, it seems to be doing just fine. Spies in Disguise is another Fox film, having made $133 million, but is $86 million in the red. And this seems to be yet another case, just like with Underwater, where they just decided to throw the film out there for this film. It was actually released in December around Christmas time, and they just didn't really care all much about it. In fact, to be perfectly honest, I thought the promotional campaign and the marketing campaign for the film was really trash, was really bad, which explains why no one is actually going to go see it and why it's going to be yet another financial loss for Disney, seeing that they now own these Fox properties. And once again, Disney continuing to just destroy the Fox name, not only by ignoring the last vestiges of the Fox properties that were being produced before the purchase, but also, of course, as I reported yesterday, they are now going to be getting rid of the Fox label from all of their studio materials, meaning that it's now going to be simply 20th Century Studios and instead of Fox Searchlight Pictures instead, which to me is just freaking stupid. And based on my research, it's being done for purely political reasons. Uncut Gems, based off of the estimated budget for that film, is actually still $2 million in the red, but I think that it will continue to do that little bit of extra box office to eventually break even and be one of the highest grossing films that the Safdie brothers have done to this point. Bombshell was a bomb. Again, the film that was all about trying to attack Fox News. I'm not really surprised that the film bombed because no one wants to go see that, even though it's getting a lot of awards contention. You have a lot of Oscar nominations for this film, and yet it is a box office bomb. Isn't that interesting how they like to award shows that and movies that aren't necessarily financially successful, but have the message that they want to send? It's almost like Hollywood is political in some capacity. Jumping to a couple others, so Frozen 2 at $1.4 billion is now one of the most profitable films of the year at $540 million in net profit, but is still not as profitable as the most profitable film of the year, which is, of course, Joker, which is at $1,067 million. It did get a recent re-release, meaning that the total profit of the film has been $557 million at the box office, with Terminator Dark Fate still being one of the largest, in fact, the largest box office bomb of 2019 at $126 million. And I plan to do my official breakdown of the biggest box office bombs of 2019 very soon. And of course, Gemini Man with over $100 million negative loss there. Unfortunately, Ford v Ferrari is also still in the loss territory, even though the film is fantastic, and it might get a bump because it's also getting some awards consideration. I'm hoping that it'll be enough to push us over the edge, and if it's not, I think that it'll be able to make this money up in the DVD and Blu-ray sales, because I know a lot of people that thoroughly enjoyed this film and plan to buy it when it comes out. But anyway, that is the box office breakdown. What are your thoughts on these films? What are your thoughts on the big box office bombs? And most especially, what are your thoughts about how Disney has basically abandoned all of their Fox properties? And it kind of makes you wonder, especially when you have films that have been pushed back now by several years, including The New Mutants. And that's going to be one of the very last Fox films that will have come out before Disney took over to actually have had any hand in. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what that film is and how that film does, seeing that film seems to have gone on and changed itself 1,000 times over and is now finally, hopefully, maybe getting a release this year, and whether or not the film will even be able to make any money, because so far, pretty much, I know, dude, it's crazy, River, it's crazy. River, I know, River, hey, it's crazy, right? None of the Fox projects under Disney's tutelage so far have done anything but have box office woes. So let me know your thoughts about that and all the things talked about in the comment section below. Also, make sure you vote in the Wednesday Raven Awards. If you're looking for the ballot, check the description of this video to find the ballot as well. Voting for that will close February 7th after the Saturday night stream. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day, and as always, God bless. And now I want to give a shout out to my January Patreon members: animation commentator Brian P, Dion, Divex, Elizabeth M, Enrique Evangelista, Fan Addicts of Film, Father Christopher Miller, Hail Father, Frank the Tank and the Shawhan Wiener Dog Clan, Harold Francis, the Hunky Chunky Funky Monkey, Inflamed Wood, It's a Trap Productions, Jason Clark, Jeffrey Toon, JJ Jonathan Jerembeck, Lady T, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mr. Peabody and his evil twin, Orange Hat Reviews, Outpost Dyer, Perpetual Punster, Riff Magos, Rosetta Allen, Sir Lanceloto, Theodore Bendon, The DJD Show, Those Two Ball Guys, and Tina B, and Sharon Ferguson. Sharon! Thank you so much for being Patreon members. And of course, to my Subscribe Star peeps, Larry, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, G2 Cool 99, Darkstar 57, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., US 888209 Fast, Dean Heiss, Harold Francis, J-Rod the Beer Guru, Nebalan G. Adams, and ZK Man. Thank you so much for supporting me this month. You guys freaking rock. And a special news shout out to Jeff Lebowski and Steve Glasker. God bless.